Okay, so before I jump into today's video, I just want to do a quick shout out and thank you to everyone who's been doing the Buy Me a Coffee for me or the super thanks, and people who've been supporting me through Patreon and through memberships. As you can probably guess from this photo, I have used a little bit of my Buy Me a Coffee money to treat my co-hosts. So Amira has a new bed, which is the one that she's meant to be on, which should hopefully allow her to be less snory. And Mouse has 2 new jackets. One is his inside sweater, and the other one is a little puffer vest for wearing over his harness when he goes for walks if it's cold. So I got them with my money from Buy Me a Coffee. So huge shout out and thank you to those people who did do Buy Me a Coffee. I have used some of that for the puppers. As many of you know, I am actually putting most of my money aside at the moment to purchase a MacBook so that hopefully in the future, when I get that far, I can start doing the occasional live stream also. The main reason why I mostly do pre-recorded videos is because I do it on my iPad, and so I can't do screen share, which you need when you're doing a live. So that's why I do everything on my iPad pre-recorded. But hopefully down the track I will get myself a MacBook, and then there will be live streams also. Now, just another quick aside, I emailed the RCMP for a bit of clarification on a few issues. So the 3 questions I had were, first of all, over Daniel's claims that they were all secretly cleared months ago. Also, I queried if they had actually done any interviews with Dingbat. And the third query was with relation to the location of the blanket. Because on one hand, we're being told that this blanket was found on Lansdowne Road, but the documents said that it was found on Lansdowne Station Road, which is a different location. So I queried those three things. So I'll go with the bottom email first because that stands out. So they clarified that it was actually Lansdowne Road where the blanket was found, not Lansdowne Station Road. So that is an error in the documents. And yes, I have covered over my name in this because I don't want to dox myself. I do reserve my right to remain private. So the first email that I had from them was discussing my questions over Dingbat and over Daniel being secretly cleared. Their response was, as this is an ongoing investigation, we're unable to speak to suspects. We're also not disclosing who RCMP officers have interviewed. I didn't actually refer to anyone as suspects. I just said cleared from involvement. So it's interesting that they've mentioned it as suspects. But the thing that I think is significant, and the reason why I wanted to share this at the start of this video, is the final paragraph where it says, although investigators are considering all possibilities and scenarios, there's no evidence to indicate that the children were abducted, which basically completely puts to an end Dingbat's story and Daniel's story. Because if their stories were true, by now RCMP would have investigated and they would have found evidence. So we can just put to bed this ridiculous story of Malaya organising for the kids to be taken somewhere. This was a made-up story from Dingbat, and one which Daniel has now decided is a good story and is going to run with. Now I'm just going to go through the official release from the RCMP first, which probably a lot of you have already heard, but I still am going to read through it. So this is from the RCMP page. Investigators continue to explore all possible scenarios to locate Lily and Jack Sullivan. Appeal for more information. The North East Nova RCMP Major Crime Unit, MCU, continues to explore all possible scenarios in its efforts to locate Lily and Jack Sullivan, after searches in Lansdowne Station did not result in finding human remains. In late September, Inspector Luke Retty and his dog Nark, as well as Sergeant Dave Whalen and his dog Kit, searched for Lily and Jack in Lansdowne Station, covering a total area of 40 kilometres. The teams, specially trained in detecting human remains, searched at the property from which the children went missing, along the pipeline and intersecting trails, and in an area where a pink blanket was previously found, all locations where there was the highest probability of finding the children. However, the teams did not locate any remains. Straight away, I have an issue with that, because I could have told them that none of those locations were actually locations where they had the highest probability of finding the children. We know from Daniel's comment of being 100% certain that they wouldn't find anything on the property, that clearly the children were not going to be found there. And as for the pipeline, the trails, the location of the pink blanket, we know those locations are also not going to be locations where they would find the children. I've said before, and I stand by this, those children are on family property. They are not on land that is readily accessible to the public. Why do I say that? Daniel's utter confidence and also his obsessive need for control. He has been working so hard since the beginning of this to maintain control of the narrative, to maintain control of the investigation. So you can bet that in terms of his need for control, that his choice of location for where these children are was going to be somewhere that he knew he still maintained control. And I'm just going to say, if RCMP haven't figured that out yet, then they probably need to bring in some different analysts, some different language and behaviour analysts, some different psychologists, because this is such basic knowledge. The dogs are highly trained to detect and indicate the scent of human remains. Therefore, if the dogs did not alert their handlers, it suggests the dogs were never in the presence of human remains odour, explains Senior Sergeant Stephen Pike, RCMP Police Dog Services Training Centre. However, this doesn't definitively rule out the presence of remains in the areas that were searched. It means either the odour is there and couldn't be detected, or the odour isn't there. Of course it's going to mean one of those things. Basically, he's saying either there wasn't an odour there, or our dogs aren't as highly trained as we would like you to believe. And this is probably the point where I remind people, for those of you who followed the Madeline Soto case, when they ran the dogs around the cars, Jen Soto's car and Stephen Stearns' car, one of the dogs alerted to the wheel arch of Jen Soto's car and yet did not alert to Stephen Stearns' car. And yet we know that he drove around for an hour or so with Madeline in the front seat of the car, deceased, and that he transferred her to the trunk of the car around 9:30ish, where she basically remained for about 4 or 5 hours before he took her out and left her where she was later found. So dogs sometimes don't alert. If they have been inadequately trained, then that could have an impact. But the other thing we need to understand here is that body fat and body mass has an impact on the speed of decomposition. Lily and Jack were both small, very small body mass, with minimal body fat, meaning that for them the rate of decomposition would have been quite slow. So had something occurred on that property, had they then been removed within a few hours of that happening, I can see why dogs wouldn't alert. Okay, back to this. While the searches were occurring, the investigative team in the Northeast Nova MCU continued to assess and follow up on information that has been gleaned from the more than 860 tips received to date. 8,060 video files that have been reviewed and forensic testing that continues. There are multiple aspects of this investigation ongoing simultaneously, says Senior Sergeant Rob McCammon, Officer in Charge, Acting, of Major Crime and Behavioural Sciences. Each piece of information, including the results from the search teams, helps inform our next steps. With support from agencies across Canada, the investigative team is working to validate or eliminate leads and follow the evidence wherever it takes us. At this stage, and as we've said all along, we're considering all possibilities. We'll keep going until we determine with certainty the circumstances of the children's disappearance and their found. So there's a few things that grab me here. First of all, them searching, taking the dogs to the location where the piece of blanket was found. That means they are taking that piece of blanket seriously. So Daniel's claims that they told him that the blanket was planted, we know that's BS. Well, I mean, we knew that was BS anyway, but this just proves that they're not going to waste time searching the area where they found the piece of blanket if they knew that it had been deliberately planted. The other thing about them searching the location where the piece of blanket was found says to me that forensics may well link that piece of blanket to Lily and Jack's disappearance. So basically it seems like they're definitely not disregarding that piece of blanket. So they're making it very clear that it is definitely still an active, ongoing investigation. And the other thing that gives me hope here is that they are referring to an investigative team. So this isn't just something that they've scaled back and they've just got a few detectives on it now. They still have a team working on this, which means that there is a case happening. Now, 5 months may seem like a lot of time, but cases like this can take a while to reach a point where arrests can be made. I don't think any of us expected that the dogs were going to locate the children on 1407 Gerlock Road. Daniel seemed pretty certain that they weren't there, which basically says to me that he's confident that he's put them somewhere where they're not going to be found. And I think he's going to have a surprise on his hands. Now, there's a little bit at the bottom of the page after the investigators urge anyone with information to contact these. Sometimes the smallest detail holds the biggest answers. One piece of information may help to reveal a key piece in the investigation that leads to finding Lily and Jack, says Senior Sergeant McCammon. So CBC have done another interview. This time it's with the head investigating guy again. We've heard from him before. So they've done an interview with him about the results from the dogs. I feel a little bit awkward about commenting on his body language and stuff because this is not someone who's an actual suspect. But I just want to point out, for those of you who are getting a feel for how all this body language stuff works, pay attention to his hands, pay attention to his face, the way his skin gets kind of flushed. Just pay close attention to his body language, because I think that does tell us a little bit here.
Dogs that are trained to detect human remains were in the community on the property where the children went missing. What did they find?
Well, they did not find or signify any, identify any scent of human remains during their search. So they searched the property around the family's home. They searched the area where we found the pink blanket, the pipeline area, and the intersecting trails, and they didn't. The dogs didn't indicate on any scent of human remains during those searches.
This guy's not really as cool, calm and collected as he comes across when you watch his face or listen to his voice. At one point in time, he was just jiggling his legs there. He seems like he's being honest when he's saying that they didn't find any scent. Get the open palms, hands out thing going on. But why does he seem a little bit anxious, a little bit wired? Is it the pressure, knowing that people are watching very closely, knowing that they're being scrutinised? Or is it because it's like a game of chess and he's being very careful not to give away any information that shouldn't be told?
What does that mean?
Well, it means that they didn't locate any human remains or anything associated to this file or any open files, so there was no human remains found. It means that we've basically completed that area of the search. It doesn't necessarily mean that that there's no possibility that there isn't human remains there. There could have been a chance the dogs maybe missed it or whatever, but at the end of the day, we haven't located any human remains.
So it seems like he's saying, yeah, we found nothing, but we haven't got confidence in these dogs, so that doesn't mean that there isn't something there. And yes, I feel as frustrated as I realise everybody else is over what this RCMP office is doing. You know, one little glimmer of hope would be good. One little comment to let us know that they actually are competent, that they are actually getting somewhere with this case, other than just saying, oh, we're continuing to investigate, we've got teams on it, we're keeping an open mind because obviously we don't have a clear direction. I hope that truly isn't the case.
So it doesn't mean that there is not human remains there.
There's always a possibility that maybe the scent didn't hit the dog that day or what have you, but we're confident in the search patterns that were deployed and based on the best practices of our police dog services human remains detection handling unit, and we were confident in the search done, but we did not find human remains.
Help the public understand how there could still be a possibility, though. What other factors could be at play?
Well, I mean, the conditions at the time were good for the work we were doing, but I'm not entirely sure of exactly the technical things or the technical kind of terms to use associated to why they wouldn't have got seen or how something could be found in the area. But
so at least he's admitting here that he actually doesn't know how all this works. He doesn't really understand the finer details when it comes to human remains detection dogs. But it seems to me that if you are in a senior position, then shouldn't you make it your job to learn about it, to understand, to be able to explain it? Sorry, I needed a bit of snark there. I needed a chance to just sort of release the frustration, because I'm just feeling really frustrated with the RCMP right now.
But regardless, they could be tucked away in different areas. There could be anything that could have caused an odor not to be picked up by the dog. But again, to our best practices and the training and expertise of our PDS handling unit, we feel we've exhausted the area as best as we can.
Really, there's no way you could say with 100% certainty.
There just isn't a way I could say with 100% certainty. There's the reality is we're dealing with nature and you know, things could happen that we don't understand right now. And at the end of this, when we find out where Jack and Lily are and bring them home, then we should have those answers and understand better.
So the important takeaway there is he is saying we cannot be 100% certain that just because the dogs didn't find anything, that there isn't anything there. I found it interesting that he said basically, essentially, when all this is resolved and we've found Lily and Jack, then we can probably answer why the dogs didn't find anything. That to me suggests that they were expecting the dogs to find traces of odour, most likely on the property. All that says to me is that when whatever happened to these children happened, that I'm thinking that they acted pretty quickly to cover their tracks, and that the children did not remain on the property for long if they were deceased.
How many days were the teams on the ground?
I believe it was around 3 days that the teams associated to this particular search, and they searched roughly 40 kilometers of area during that time.
And what do you mean by 40 kilometers? Is that?
Well, they do, again, I'm not a PDS dog handler, so I can't talk about all the specifics, and I wouldn't talk about all the specifics related to an investigation, but in general, they run certain search patterns, and they do, certain techniques and drills to kind of put the dogs out there and do the searching. So to say exactly how that looks, but they covered roughly 40 kilometers of area during the 3 days that they were searching. It covered all the areas that we felt were relevant to our investigation.
So obviously there we're talking about a 40 kilometre square area, which may sound a lot, but when you think about it, you know, if you're looking at a particular area, 40 kilometres squared can be essentially 4 kilometres by 10 kilometres in area. Like you go out 4 kilometres and you go along 10 kilometres, and a square that is 4 kilometres long, 10 kilometres wide. It's not a huge area. It sounds to me like basically they've stuck within their 5 to 8 kilometre radius of the home. Like I said, that's not where they're going to find the children. But him saying they covered all the areas that we felt were relevant to our investigation, that makes me lose a little bit of confidence in the RCMP. Because from what he's saying, they're covering areas that personally, while I would say, yeah, sure, rule them out, they wouldn't be top of my list in terms of locations to find where the children are.
Did they search inside the trailer?
I would have to get back to you for specifics on that, but they did search in and around the property. I wouldn't be able to answer for sure right now. I could quickly find, we'll get Stratcoms to find that answer, but I'm not sure if they went inside, but they did do the whole property around and the area around there, the pipeline trails, where the pink blanket's at, and then intersecting paths and areas.
So it seems to me that there's a lot that he doesn't know. Clearly she's following YouTube and social media and has read come across the video where Daniel claims that the dog handlers were quizzing him and trying to get a false confession out of him while they were in the house.
Did one of the handlers question the children's stepfather, Daniel Martel?
I can't comment on what was said between Mr. Martel and the dog handler. That's really not something I'm aware of or have knowledge on, and I don't have any comment there. So,
like I said, I'm not comfortable with doing any sort of public analysis of someone who is the head of a major crimes unit. Seems a little bit unfair. I may do a discussion of this in a members only video though, because there are things that I want to comment on. I just had to freeze on this particular frame before I carried on because it's an interesting look. I'm going to say that he is definitely, at the very least, aware of the allegations made by Daniel. And it's quite clear that that's exactly what she's referring to at that point in time. Here's the thing that frustrates me though. It seems to us that it would be impossible for Daniel not to be considered a suspect in this case. And yet RCMP are basically sitting back and allowing him to make a mockery of the case, allowing him to make a mockery of them, and dare I say it, allowing him to make a mockery of Lily and Jack being missing. Now, I get that in these investigations they have their strategies, and they're not going to tell us their strategies. And it seems that one of the strategies is to just let him go and let him run his mouth and continue to talk, and they're probably watching every single interview that he does, reading every single post that he makes or, conversation. But it would just be nice if they could grow a set and just once come out and basically refute one of the statements that he's made. Because there are people who genuinely care about these children and who are feeling angry and upset over Daniel's showcasing. So it would be nice to know that RCMP aren't buying all this crap and that they are actually doing a legitimate investigation.
Would it be common practice for a dog handler to question people who are involved in investigation?
There may be circumstances. I mean, I'm not sure that there's strict protocols on talking or not talking. I mean, when a dog handler, and maybe not protect this circumstance, but if you show up somewhere and you need to use a dog, you would probably gather some information to help you get that started. So there could be reasons for sure for PDS to be talking to somebody at the scene to get the information they need. But again, there's no solid and fast rules on that. So yeah, there may, they may talk to people when they deploy, when they may not. So
I think we can probably take that as a no comment with a little bit on the side, basically saying if there was a conversation, it was done for professional reasons and not someone just being unethical.
Given there were no human remains detected and that these were locations that were the highest areas of probability, is there any other possibility of cadaver dogs being brought in again?
absolutely. If we have information or evidence or facts that suggest that there'd be benefit to bringing in whatever resources available to the RCMP, we will look at deploying that resource when it's relevant, pertinent, and beneficial to the investigation. So if there were information or anything that we needed to do or an area we needed to cover again or anything like that, then we would look at bringing them back in and having that done.
Well, that's quite reassuring. But like I said, the areas that they seem to have searched seem to be the obvious areas that actually would not be the top of my list for areas to search. I'm more than happy to make a suggestion to RCMP of my number one location where I believe those children are.
What happens now?
Now we continue on with our investigative work. Nothing stopped from the second day of this investigation when major crime took carriage and began collating and sorting and organizing the information and planning the investigation. We haven't stopped. We've talked with a number of people. We've got over 1,000 taskings that we're still creating new ones and developing new areas to gather information from. We've reviewed over 8,000 videos, thousands of hours of video from the area, and we've done an extensive ground search using both technical capabilities, partner agencies, GSAR, DNR, to as thoroughly as we possibly can search the area around the home and those other areas that I mentioned. And that's if we continue to gather information, make decisions based on that, and if those information suggests that we need to do more searching, we will.
So he's essentially saying exactly the same things that we were told 3 months ago. He's not giving us anything additional here in terms of what they're doing with the investigation. There's nothing new here. in terms of the investigation, which for me is so frustrating. But he seems like he is a little bit defensive. I think he is aware of the amount of criticism that is being levelled at the RCMP right now.
So the investigation hasn't let up since May 2nd?
No, it has not let up and it won't. This is not something that we stop working on. We've got 2 young children, Lily and Jack, who've gone missing from their home, and it is a Missing Persons Act investigation still at this time. But we need to find answers to that. There's a lot of legitimate public concerns about how 2 children go missing and we can't find them, so we're going to continue until we have answers.
Now that's interesting to know that it is still a Missing Persons Act investigation. So like I've mentioned before, that gives them a lot more freedom in terms of records access and stuff like that. Instead of having to come up with probable cause when they're making an application for a warrant, they're just putting in a records request. And with that, all they have to say is, we think this is going to help us in our investigation in terms of locating these missing children. So there is far less onus on them to prove why they need that particular document or why they need access to search a property or something like that. So it makes sense to me that it would still be under the Missing Persons Act. They're basically doing their best to make their job as easy as possible. But it also makes me worry a bit that perhaps they haven't found that one crucial bit of evidence, crucial bit of information that will allow them to pivot into a full-on criminal investigation.
RCMP have been conducting forensic testing, including on the pink blanket that you mentioned. What can you say about what results came back or what we know about the forensic testing?
Of course, I can't say much about the details because it's part of our investigation and there's a process we go through and we don't want to put out much information. But we've been working with our National Laboratory Services to have the DNA testing done and to get any type of testing related to this investigation in as timely manner as possible.
Okay, that's interesting. So she's asked him, what can you say about the results that came back or what you know about the forensic testing? And first of all, he goes to the standard line of, we can't tell you anything specific because of our investigation. But then he says, we're working with these agencies to try and get results in as timely manner as possible. That to me says they haven't got back all their forensic testing yet. So that gives me a little bit of hope. And the way he was talking also suggests that it's more than just testing the blanket and the piece of blanket. There's more forensic testing that's going on, in my opinion.
It's been at least a week since the dog handlers were on site. Why is there a lag in informing the public of what they didn't find?
Well, I'm not sure about the lag. We put our information together. We wanted to make sure that we provide accurate information to the public, and both that and some availability for me to be able to come and talk to the public. We wanted to make sure that I had that availability. So there was some delays about that, and we didn't have immediate information that we felt was going to change or collect evidence for us or change the direction of the investigation. So we felt we should maintain an organizational approach to this and make sure that we're prepared to provide the information we have and set up these QAs. So that's a bit of the delay. But basically there wasn't immediate information we felt we needed to share with the public, and that we would take the time to get our messaging in line and set up the meetings like this. So
this guy would make a great politician, wouldn't he? Lots of words to say very little. But what stood out to me was him saying that we decided to take the time to get our messaging in line. Now, if the message was a simple message of, we took the dog teams in, they found nothing, full stop, end of story. That doesn't take a week to come up with. So basically, they've sat down, they've had strategy meetings, they've discussed whatever the findings were from the dogs, and it makes me question if maybe there was some alerts from those dogs in a particular location, and that they are being very careful not to put any information out that's going to compromise their investigation. You know, to say we didn't have anything to say, that's why we waited a week, but we wanted to make sure that we were getting the message right. Sounds to me like they were basically making sure that they were able to continue to obfuscate. I hope I'm right, but I get a sense that there's some information here that's not being given to the public. And I know you're going to go, well, duh, of course not. But what I mean is in relation to the dog searches. We know that they don't have to be 100% honest with the public when they're talking about a case, because the number one priority is to protect the investigation. And this guy's body language tells me that he's holding something back.
You're a major crimes investigator, and yet this case is being investigated under the Missing Persons Act. Is that still the case?
Absolutely. Yes, it is, under the Missing Persons Act.
I'm just going to say, pay close attention while he's saying all this to his body language.
One of the things that major crime brings is the ability to collect, manage, collate, organize, and review large volumes of information using some of our standard practices on information control and management. So when you have a file like this that's large, we do support an investigative capacity. So there are other areas that sometimes major crime would support an investigative capacity. Larger incidents that maybe aren't necessarily the specifics of major crime, but they need that extra added boost for file management, information management, and things like that. So we do support in different areas like that, but we are the lead on this investigation because of the large size, the volume, and our ability to interconnect different parts of the RCMP to kind of understand what their capabilities are and bring to bear on a given situation. So that's part of the reason why we remain involved in the lead in the investigation.
Okay, like I said, I'm not going to comment on his body language here on a public video, but I do want to point one thing out. Now, as I said at the beginning, they have said in their email to me, which I only received yesterday or the day before, that they have not found any evidence of abduction. He's talking here about it being a massive file, which means that clearly if they don't have evidence of an abduction and it's a massive file, then even though he's saying we're just here for the help with the administrative side of things, it's not going to be a massive, complicated file if those children just wandered off into the woods. It's not going to be a massive, complicated file if it's an abduction that they have no evidence of. So even though he's trying to play it down, he is admitting here that it is a criminal investigation, even though they are still calling it a missing persons investigation. Like I said, this guy should be a politician because he knows how to talk the talk.
So to be clear, it's currently not a criminal investigation.
No, it's not. We don't have any. We haven't collected evidence or facts or information that suggests criminal investigation or charges or anything like that at this time. So we are still investigating a Missing Person Act.
Yeah, I don't buy it at all. You probably noticed that he was really struggling to get the words out there in terms of saying that it wasn't a criminal investigation. So he stumbles around trying to say that they haven't found anything that suggests a criminal investigation or charges or anything like that. And then he says, and so we're still investigating a missing person act. No. You could say we are still investigating it under the Missing Person Act, but to say we are still investigating a Missing Person Act basically implies we are investigating an act that has resulted in these children going missing. Now, I should point out here that if we take him at his word and he says that they still haven't collected anything that suggests a criminal investigation or charges or anything like that, abduction still counts as criminal. So if we are to take him at his word, then the only possibility here is that either these children just kind of became invisible and evaporated from the property, or that they wandered off and got lost in the woods. We know that that is not likely. But he's bumbling around over trying to say that it's not a criminal investigation, and then the slip up and saying that we're still investigating a Missing Person Act. I think he kind of dropped his guard a little bit here. So I'll replay that bit before I play the next bit.
So to be clear, it's currently not a criminal investigation.
No, it's not. We don't have any. We haven't collected evidence or facts or information that suggests criminal investigation or charges or anything like that at this time. So we are still investigating a Missing Person Act.
The news release today mentioned you're exploring all possibilities. I think a lot of people are wondering what the possibilities are here.
Yeah. Of course, I can't talk about our investigative theories and our direction, but part of the role of being an investigator is to be unbiased and collect information and fact and make decisions based on that. So we continue to do that, and we will continue to do that until we have the answers we need to bring Jack and Lily home.
So he claims it's not a criminal investigation, but at the same time, they apparently have investigative theories and they have a direction for the investigation. If these children had basically wandered off into the woods, what theories do you need for your investigation for that? What direction would your investigation be taking other than to organise more searches? Honestly, I think that in this day and age, it does more damage to an investigation to be keeping everything so silent than it does to be giving information to the public. Just a little bit of information to give the public some idea of where you're headed with this just might bring in that one tip that you need to progress this case to the point where you want it to be.
What would you say to members of the public, members of the family who really want answers?
What I would say to them is that we are grinding as hard as we can to get those answers for them. We want the answers as much as everyone else. We're family people. We have children, we have families, we're aunts, uncles, grandparents, we're everything, not a grandparent yet, but we have the same connections to our communities and our families as everyone else, and we understand the concern. We are concerned, and we are, working hard to gather all the information that we can to get the answers to bring Jack and Lily home, and we won't stop that.
They really don't get it, do they? They don't get that for many people it has gone beyond mere frustration over not having answers. It is fast approaching boiling point where people are getting angry at the RCMP for not giving out any information, for keeping people in the dark, and for allowing those clowns that are in that family that were living on that property to continue to put out their false narratives, to continue to try and confuse the issue here, even though they're not trying at all to plead for people to help find Jack and Lily. I mean, the more that Daniel speaks out, the more that Janie speaks out, the angrier people get at them being allowed to come out and basically crap all over the investigation and make a complete, utter mockery of the fact that these children are missing. I mean, really, it's situations like this that lead to the likes of Bullcrap Betty rocking up at the house with a bullhorn and making a scene. And honestly, given the way that Daniel is stirring the pot, they're lucky that they are not in the United States, because I would imagine that you probably would have the likes of Bullcrap Betty camping out on the road, wanting to know where the children are. But luckily for them, it appears that Canadians are a little bit more passive.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would like to, thank the public for the cooperation and information that they have provided. I would like to just identify that if anybody does have any further information or facts or evidence or anything that they feel could assist us in locating Jack and Lily, to please call us, and we will follow up and gather that information and follow up with that. So, but we do appreciate that. And I would like to say that, this is a very tough time for the public at large, the investigators, but especially the family. I can't imagine what they must be going through. We're doing the best we can to get answers for them and everybody else in this situation. So.
Yep, go ahead, thank the public, but treat them like a bunch of imbeciles. Honestly. That last comment about, must be hard for the family. Let's be real. The only family members that I really give a rat's about are Belinda and Chelsea, because nobody else is coming out and screaming for information on what happened to these children. Nobody else is coming out and pleading for the public to help them find these children, pleading for answers. The mother of these children has not said a word since the day after they went missing. She's not calling out for these children to be found or for justice to be served. And then you've got Daniel and his family, whose only concern is to basically convince people that they're innocent and they had nothing to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lily. They seem to have by now completely forgotten that Jack and Lily existed. This latest update from the RCMP feels like a complete slap in the face. They must see what is going on. They must see the way that Daniel and his family and all his hanger-oners are just making a complete mockery of this case. They must see how frustrated and angry the people who genuinely care are becoming. And they come out with yet another big nothing. So I'm going to finish with this one comment. I know that when I heard this update, I felt frustrated, I felt angry, I felt like I wanted to lash out. But I want to remind people that we need to keep our thoughts on Belinda and Chelsea, the people who genuinely care about these children, the people who are truly suffering over these children being missing. Let's keep them in our thoughts, and let's just hope that we get some sort of news soon. So on that note, thanks for listening. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button and please leave a comment below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.